Hey, what's up, radio? Welcome to episode number 68 here on season number 2. And today we are getting into $100,000 profit using bonds. This question comes from Tim Miller, and he asks, how much money would you have to invest into bonds to make $100,000 in 10 years? And would the 0.25% fee be worth it? I'm not specifically sure if this came from one of my Acorns videos or one of my Stash videos, but basically Stash and Acorns, along with like a lot of other robo type app investing accounts, will charge you a 0.25% after you hit $5,000. And I do plan on coming out with a video soon kind of talking about why it's more important to get your account to like a $4,000 account balance instead of having it sit at like a $500 account balance. And that's in regards to the fee that they do charge $1 a month up until that point of $5,000, and then it's a 0.25% per year on that money that you have. These videos are meant for educational purposes only and not meant to be taken as financial advice. You are responsible to protect your own assets, so please, please, please do your own research. Just to be frank with you, just to be Nick with you. Hey, how about that, huh? Now, just to be like real honest, it's going to take you a lot of money to generate $100,000 in 10 years. And this would also be with you reinvesting those profits year over year and using compound interest to your advantage. So in my research, basically I've came to the conclusion that bond type ETFs are going to pay or grow about 5 to 6% a year. That could be around 3% for like government bonds, and then all the way up to maybe 10% or more for the corporate, risky corporate type bonds. Basically, to come down to the line, to be honest, how much would you really need? You would basically need about $160,000 up front to generate $100,000 by year 10 on your account. So you start investing $160,000, throw it into account. Obviously, they're going to charge you a 0.25% for having their account with you, which comes to about $450 to $650, which would be later on in the account's life, but $450 up front. It would take you, at the end of 10 years, you would have about $260. Again, this is not adjusting for that fee that would be taken out. This is just solely compound interest and not taking out the fee. So if you threw an account that didn't charge any fees, it would take $160,000, and by the end of year 10, you would have about $260,000 with a 5% interest or 5% return, along with that compounding. However, my thing with compound interest is if you give it a little bit more time, it starts to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow exponentially. And so if you let it sit for just one more measly year, you would have generated another $13,000. You would have an account balance of $273,000 instead of an account balance of $260,000. Like I was saying, with a fee of 0.25% on an account of $160,000, you're looking at paying about $450 to later on in the account's life around $650 a year. Also, in regards to the compound interest, if you were able to let that account sit for another 10 years, so if you let that account compound off that original investment of $160,000, by the end of year 20, you would have $424,000. You would have about $424,000, potentially almost doubling your account. If you were able to get a little bit higher percent, you could definitely double it. So if you're sitting there and like, okay, well, how could I invest a little bit less money? You would need to find an ETF or a bond that pays a higher rate of return, which would be like 6, 7, maybe even up to 10%, and then you could decrease it down your original investment. The second option would be to make a large investment up front and then maybe add money monthly, thus building that account would be another way to do it. It just might take you longer because you would need that $160,000 right up front in order to make that $100,000 at the very end. And like I was saying, this number does not include inflation or taxes as well. And with both of these applied, you figure a 3% inflation rate over the next 10 years would be 30% inflation. So it would drop that account basically almost half, I would say, just for the sake of math, half, but it would drop it by 30%. And then also with taxes applied too, you're looking at more. And so if you really wanted to take like the adjusted $100,000 in profit, you would need to add a substantial amount more money into that account, original investment up front. So I hope that makes sense. That's why a lot of people, I recommend doing equities and then also doing bonds, because typically with equities you're going to get a lot more growth, and then you're also going to get dividends, which gives you that compounding effect. And then with bonds, it'll keep your account more stable as well. Thanks for asking, Tim. We will go ahead and leave it right there. Let's go ahead and dive into the question of the day, which is, what was your best story from a wedding? Well, my best story from a wedding was my wedding story. Let's be honest. My wedding was the best. Well, I don't know if it was like the best, like looking at other people's weddings, but for me it was the best wedding that I've ever had. Like the only wedding that I've ever had either. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So that was the best wedding story from a wedding I guess that I've ever had experienced. Like I always say, if you have any questions regarding Stash, Acorns, Robinhood, as well as general investing advice, business, Etsy coaching, post those questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe up here and check out my Acorns recap, February edition. Check out that video right here. And as always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.